So in this video, I want to talk about the recent episode of Mushoku Tensei because there's been some interest in wanting to know the situation between Paul and Elinalise. Now, I've spoken about this before in a past video, going over what my theories were based on the light novels itself. Now, of course, that video was done well before the mobile game came out for Mushoku Tensei. I don't really see the point in having to play the game itself, just because, sure, it has some stuff in there. People are arguing whether it's canon or not. It is probably canon, but it's one of those things where I do prefer if stuff like that is in the light novels, and maybe at some point later on down the line there might be a redundancy volume that has this stuff in there. But in my past video, just to kind of give some context, I came up with this theory that, based on some of the things that were hinted and led at, and this is stuff that's already been talked about in the actual light novels and the anime based on the timeline, so this isn't spoiler territory per se, and even the stuff that I'm going to be saying to clarify what the actual squabble was about is game spoilers, so not light novel spoilers, so it isn't really spoilers itself unless you want to count the game stuff, unless that is the fact that you're going to play the game. If you're not, then it's not spoilers. So my theory was straightforward, based on the information that we could glean from the light novels, that Elinalise and Ghislaine had some form of relationship, or not like a proper relationship, but had, you know, got the dirty on with Paul, and then as time went on, Zenith came along, and of course in the light novels, it is pointed out that Paul tried to pursue a relationship with her, and she said, "You gotta put a ring on me, and then I'll let you sleep with me," which he then did. And that is when the actual party itself disbands. So what I gleaned from that was that pretty much he had a bit of a fling with the other two in the party. It felt very much like a family kind of thing. And then Zenith came along, and he ended up pursuing her and disbanding the party, which led Elinalise a little bit jaded from that situation, and she doesn't blame so much Zenith, she blames Paul, because Paul was the one that made that decision to do that. Now, of course, in the game, it has come out that exactly that is pretty much what happened. It's pretty much those two kind of got it on, and then Zenith came along, and then he disbanded the party to pursue Zenith in a relationship and have a family. So for me, it was pretty obvious just what it hinted at, but having the game kind of solidify it was also kind of important, because it gives context. It really does allow you to understand, hey, this was the situation, this was why she felt disgruntled about what happened, and I can understand her perspective, but also Paul is Paul. He was always a bit of a, I wouldn't say sleazebag in that sense, but he pretty much was. He was a bit of a sleazebag, and she probably should have realized that that was what he was kind of pursuing, but then was willing to settle down, and maybe that is where the disgruntled comes in. Again, I do plan to read the stuff from the actual game. It's all in a sort of a PDF file, so I plan to go over that in great detail. It's called like the Paul Guiden. I've planned to fully read it and go into a full-on analysis, so have that video expected at some point later on in the future. But then there's also the discussion about the this recent episode and some of the cut content from this. Now, I expected this type of content to be cut because it's done it for everything else, and that is Roxy's perspective of her being stuck in the dungeon. That is the big thing. I'm not really going to sit there and go into the nitty-gritty details and spend an hour explaining what happened in that chapter, because I don't really think it's that big. It's just her perspective, her despair, her kind of going through that dungeon and trying to fight her way through it, which it does show a little bit in the anime, but there's a lot more to it when it comes to her monologuing, and as well as a bit of the combat that goes on as well, and some of her self-reflections on things that happen in her life. So there's that kind of stuff. But there is this debate of, should it been cut, should it been in the anime? I feel like the anime's always been about Rudy's perspective in the world and not focusing so much on other characters' perspectives. Of course, you've got the Eris OVA, but that's because it was kind of needed, because it was kind of like a side attachment. Like, it's more about what is critical and needed for the story to progress. The Eris thing was kind of needed to make sure that the story kind of made sense as you go along, while Roxy's perspective of being in the dungeon, as much as it would be nice to have it, it's not critical. It's not going to destroy the story and lead to you not understanding what's happening in the next episode. You will understand. And if someone sits in the comments and says, oh no, it had to be there or else it's going to do... I feel like at that point you're probably being a bit of a drama queen. Would have it been nice? Yes, absolutely. A one-to-one loyal adaptation would be nice. As a light novel reader, yeah, I'd love that. But at the same time, is it going to make the series bad because of it not being there? No. Now, of course, you've got the episode 0 that happened for season 2, which again, it falls back to the Eris OVA kind of thing. It's kind of needed just to give some context of characters that are having their own journey that aren't in line with Rudy's. So again, if it shows Rudy's perspective in there, it doesn't need to show someone else's. You look at the Sarah drama that happened earlier on in the season. Did they go into Sarah's point of view? No, because at the end of the day, it wasn't needed to explain Rudy's perspective and how he saw things, which is why I do those videos where I explain the different perspectives. And at the end of the day, if you want a full deep dive into it, you have the light novel videos there as well. But I'm loving the absolute hell out of this season. I've always enjoyed Mushoku Tensei because it really shows and highlights the nature of humans, how we are flawed, how we have kinks in our armor. And I feel like a broken record saying it a million times, but I'm going to repeat it anyway because it is important to remind all the Mushoku Tensei haters out there that Mushoku Tensei is about a journey. The highs, the lows, the growth in itself. And whenever I mention the word growth, people just assume that, oh, well, Rudy will grow and never make a mistake again. That's not how humans work. Humans will grow and become better, hopefully. And in this case, I do believe Rudy has grown and become a better person, but he's still not immune to making mistakes. No one is. And so I feel like Mushoku Tensei has always been that reflection of human nature. And I feel like a lot of people that hate Mushoku Tensei, and I'm not saying all, some people just genuinely don't like the series as a whole, but a lot of the real die-hard toxic haters generally hate it, I think, is because it's a bit of a... They see themselves in Rudy, a character that is flawed, that has done major mistakes, and not saying exact mistakes, but in the nature of mistakes. They see a flawed human being, and then they see that reflection of, hey, I've made mistakes in life, I'm ashamed of it, that kind of mindset that they're having, and so they don't want to see a show like this. They want to go into a show that's an isekai, self-insert protagonist that has the personality of a cardboard cutout, real no flavor to it, or it's just a sort of Mary Sue. Because I know a lot of people say, oh no, I like animes that have like complex characters, and then when you actually watch them, a lot of the times they are just Mary Sues. They're like picture perfect characters that have no flaws or kinks. Sure, they might have a bit of a personality to them, their own likes, dislikes and all that, and maybe they might get a little bit stroppy in an episode or something when something doesn't go right, but overall they're pretty much a Mary Sue. That's why I like Mushoku Tensei. It's also another reason why I like Moonlit Fantasy as well, because they both have very similar ways of kind of like showing the human nature, the strengths, the weaknesses, the flaws, and the kinks in what makes us who we are. Moonlit Fantasy goes about in a very different perspective, but I do like that they both tried to do something like that, but unique in their own right. So it's why I've loved this anime season, because there are so many good animes out there that are trying to do things differently. But of course, because these are also isekais as well, it is also super cool and super rad to hate on isekais and reincarnations and power fantasies. So it's one of those where it's, yeah, at the end of the day, it's one of those it's cool to hate kind of things. But it doesn't bother me, because the way I see it and the way I think many anime fans need to see it is that just enjoy what you want to enjoy. But it is also still fun to discuss about that kind of disgruntled fans out there, because it allows us to kind of look at why they may dislike it and look at some of the issues that might be in these series. Definitely with Mushoku Tensei, some of these characters have definitely done some things that definitely make you cringe and wince and be like, yeah, that's definitely not a great path that they went down, and Paul's a great example. Paul cheated on his wife, slept with the maid, ended up doing some pretty bad things, got pretty deep and dark into alcohol, and then kind of lashed out at his own son because he saw his son as Rudy, as this sort of omnipotent or great being that should be able to solve all these problems, forgetting that he is just an individual human that's not some omnipotent being. Sure, he might have some great gifts and some strong people by his side, but again, there are limits to what Rudy can do, and when you have someone like Orsted rolling around a corner, Rudy ain't the almighty overpowered character that I think a lot of people think. And that's another discussion for a whole different video. But Rudy, in my point of view, is not overpowered. He's very gifted, he's very talented, and he's definitely had some things align in his favor. But there are a lot of things that haven't aligned in his favor. And it just shows the nature of, at the end of the day, he is just a mortal individual that had been reincarnated in this alternative world. So absolutely loving Mushoku Tensei, and it's really good to see these major points of the story also come to life, and I'm really excited for when season 3 does happen, because honestly, Mushoku Tensei is one of those where it's not one of those where it like gets really good and it kind of hits a peak and then it kind of goes down in sort of the gravity of the stories itself, but this story always keeps building and building and building and building with the characters, not just Rudy but also the other characters around him that support him, and it all just complements each other, and the writer is just absolute phenomenal in how they create this world and all the characters around it. So again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you like about Mushoku Tensei? What characters stand out the most to you? Again, I just wanted to go over some of the little bits and pieces of cut content, and if you do want more deep dives in that, check out my other light novel reviews, because that's where a lot of it is. And again, your thoughts are definitely welcome. Keep them civil. If you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.